Hey there, and welcome to the Enduro Bureau's Round 3 recap and analysis of the 2025 FMSQ Canadian National Cross Country Championship from Gopher Dunes, Ontario. Let's take a look at how things shook out, and this time we're starting with the pro women. We were excited to learn a few days ahead of the race that Triple Crown WMX rider Kaylie Kayer was going to be lining up for Round 3. Kayer was third overall for the Triple Crown in 2024 and is sitting in second overall through the first three races of the 2025 season. We've seen her race MX on several occasions and are highly aware of just how fast she is. And we also know that she has excellent off road skills too. Given the nature of the speedy track at Gopher Dunes, we had picked her as our favorite for round three. And trust us, it wasn't easy to pick against Veronique Pellerin-Cheney at an FMSQ. Care didn't disappoint. She quickly overcame a poor dead engine start to take the lead in the back half of the first lap, and she never looked back from there. She set the fastest lap time on each of the four laps to finish a minute and 12 seconds ahead of defending series champ Vero. After the race, she spoke about how the track played to her MX strengths on both the national MX track and in the woods.
Kaylie, how was it?
Oh, it was really good out there. It was rough. It was fun.
Gnarly?
Yeah. You just got to keep the front wheel light and wheel tap everything and be creative out there.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. I think for a moto rider, there was a lot of opportunity for you out there to do just that.
Yeah.
Hey.
From trackside, she looked very comfortable in the lead, and it was easy to see her using her off-road skills to hold her own out in the woods before blazing the MX track sections of the course. It was a fantastic FMSQ debut for this youngster from BC, and we're hoping to see more of her in the series later in this season or next year. Coming into round three, defending champion Pellerin-Cheney had a 10-point overall lead in the championship ahead of Mila Paget and Felicia Robichaud. At Gopher Dunes, though, she'd be battling a double threat of brutal heat and the appearance of Kaylie Kayer. Vero is an exceptionally smart rider, though, and knew that if she couldn't beat Kayer, it didn't really matter for the championship. And Vero delivered the exact ride she needed, managing the heat to come home in second place ahead of Emma Sharpless, Robichaud, and Paget in that order. Vero has such an efficient and relentless racing style. She's got a real diesel motor that can occasionally take a little bit of time to get up to speed, but is incredibly consistent across all track types and weather conditions. At Gopher Dunes, she went out and set the second fastest lap times for all four laps to comfortably beat Sharpless by a minute 49. In terms of the overall FMSQ standings, things went Vero's way too, as the finishing order behind her saw her come out of round three with a 14-point lead over Robichaud in second and 16 and 17-point leads over Paget and Sharpless. With a 3-point differential between first and second place race finishes and the tight races between the ladies behind her, Vero is really starting to look very well situated to win another championship this year. Emma Sharpless has had a somewhat up and down start to the FMSQ season with a third at Sandtrap and a sixth at Lac Taureau. Both of those rounds were struggles for last year's second overall, but coming into Gopher Dunes, she seemed to have regained some confidence after making some bike adjustments. As it turns out, that confidence was well deserved, as she put in what was, to our eyes at least, her most complete race of the series to date. Sharpless rode with great consistency and set the third fastest lap times for the first three of the four laps before slowing by about 30 seconds on the final one. It was still enough to hold off a hard charging Felicia Robichaud by 8 seconds at the finish, though. Robichaud had been running close behind Sharpless for the first lap before slipping back on laps 2 and 3. Although she made up 15 seconds on the final lap 4, it just wasn't enough to get her in range for a late race attack. Her fourth place finish was enough to push her up into second overall in the standings, though, 14 points behind Pellerin-Cheney and 2 and 3 points ahead of Mila Paget and Sharpless. Tyler Medaglia came into Gopher Dunes having won the first two rounds of the series in very convincing fashion. With Gopher being another fast track and including the full legendary Sand MX Nationals track, he was the heavy favorite coming in, and he delivered in a big way, going wire to wire for the second race in a row to set himself up with a 9-point cushion at the top of the overall ahead of Alex Goujon and a 15-point gap over Loic Leonard in third. It's obviously too early to anoint Medaglia as the 2025 champion, but his rivals will need to find a way to beat him over the next two rounds to keep him within reach. Medaglia ran the fastest laps over the first three laps to really establish his lead before backing off a little on laps 4 and 5, where he had the third and second fastest laps respectively behind Goujon and Leonard on lap 3 and Goujon on lap 4. This had allowed Goujon to close the gap to 22.083 seconds from just around 1 minute after the first three laps. In our post race interview, Medaglia noted that he had good awareness that the defending champion was closing in, and he replied with a lap 6 sprint that set the fastest time for the lap and, combined with a crash by Goujon, pushed the gap back out to 40 seconds. It was interesting to see Medaglia going with a paddle tire option for this round. While the national track was obviously perfectly suited for that choice, the woods tracks were fairly firm. Medaglia talked about this setup choice after the race.
I just think in these types of conditions, it just works better for me than the 82 on lean angle, because there's more tread on the sides. It just keeps getting better and better. And the 18 is, yeah, it lasts longer, and I can run a soft moose because I'm light.
Over his off road career and over the first 3 rounds of 2025, we've seen that obviously Medaglia has devastating off road speed and a high degree of race management skill. He's been feasting on great starts, blazing opening thirds of races, and using the time cushions he builds up in the first half of the races to ride more forgiving lines in the second halves to preserve both his machine and his body. If anyone's going to beat him, it's almost certain that, barring a major mistake or mechanical issue, they'll have to take the whole shot and build a lead that can withstand Medaglia's ground speed and perhaps pressure him into making mistakes. Not easy to do. And Medaglia is also smart enough to know that strategically he can now afford to lose a round and still have a good overall lead in the championship. Coming back to Goujon, the 4-time defending champ rode another great race to grab P2 for the third straight round. We had previously noted that he needed to improve his start to have any chance of beating Medaglia in round 3, and he did get that done. It just ended up being not quite enough to overcome Medaglia's speed advantage through the National MX track. While Goujon was able to get the gap down to approximately 22 seconds in the last third of the race, a late fall combined with that Medaglia lap 6 sprint sealed his fate. If he had managed to keep it upright, we might have been in for a wild finish. There was a massive buzz in and around the pro pits and out on the trails as that time gap was coming down through the race. After the race, it was good to see Goujon a bit happier with his result than he had been in round 2. At the finish, he was within 0.619% of Medaglia's winning time, the only rider other than Leonard to finish within almost 5% of the winner. We also think that it's good for Goujon and the series to see him getting pushed like this by Medaglia. This is what drives competitive progression in riders, and he's without question going to be a better rider when the 2025 season finishes. This bodes well for FMSQ and Canadian off-road and enduro. Loic Leonard continues to impress with his ability to start fast and hang on for podium finishes this season, despite relatively limited riding time. He never had a lap time worse than 4th fastest at round 3, and he also had the second fastest times on laps 2 and 6 of the 7-lap brutally hot race. Holding down a 10-point overall lead over 4th place Jake Michaud, and with only a 2-point difference between 3rd and 4th per round, Leonard is looking very solid to keep holding on to his overall podium position. Canadian MX Triple Crown specialist Quinn Amiot was absolutely on our list of riders to watch coming into Gopher Dunes. This was going to be the KTM rider's only scheduled FMSQ round this year, and we know that he's a talented off-road rider who has a big upside in the discipline if he chooses to race more in the woods. This was demonstrated by Amiot last year as he jumped into the corduroy enduro with little preparation and came away with a 16th place overall finish with 3 top 10 test finishes. He more than lived up to our expectations with an incredible 4th place at Gopher Dunes on a track that was perfectly suited to him, beating out the likes of Owen McKill, Jean-Olivier Goulet, Jake Michaud, and Phil Cheney in the process. Interestingly, Amiot made the decision to run his motocross setup at Gopher instead of his off-road setup, switching out his air forks back to his MX forks in order to maximize his advantage on the national track and in the speedy wood sections. His hands may have paid the price in a big way, but it paid off. While his lap times were inconsistent, he still overcame a brutal last place start resulting from a lack of experience in dead engine starts to pass most of the field on lap 1 before crashing and having to repass all those people. He was only 10th fastest on that opening lap as a result, but he reeled off a series of 4th fastest laps over the next 3 laps before going 8th, 4th, and 11th fastest over the final 3. This was an exceptional performance, and it again highlights what we've been seeing this season with MX talent venturing into off-road. Their ground speed, combined with high levels of line execution and aggression bred over years of gate drops in national-level motocross, translates very well into enduro and off-road. Another rider making the jump from Triple Crown to FMSQ this last round was British Columbia's Blake Davies. He also had a great ride to finish 10th overall despite brutal laps 4 and 5, where he was only 33rd and 18th fastest overall. He bounced back from that mid race fade to ninth fastest on lap 6 and fastest overall on the final lap. We know that Davies is an outstanding off road rider, and he could be a huge talent in this discipline if he chose to focus on it. We're excited to see this MX crossover start to take off this year, and we're expecting to see more of it over the coming seasons. We know that Amiet's interested in ISDE Trophy Team racing for Canada and expect to see him in the selection mix in 2026 if he decides to go for it. Owen McKill came to life a bit more for round 3 after what was, for him, a very disappointing pair of P6 finishes in the opening 2 rounds. His 5th place finish was very respectable, and he's no doubt taking a lot of confidence from being 4th among the FMSQ series regulars. He's still got work to do in terms of speed in the opening phases of races and overall consistency, but he will take some confidence from this result back to Alberta for the final round of the SOR Sprint Enduro Championship, and then to FMSQ round 5 in 2 weeks. McKill now sits in 5th overall, 4 points back of Jake Michaud, and just 1 point ahead of Cheney and 2 points ahead of Goulet in 5th and 6th, respectively. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we're looking forward to round 4 coming up in 2 weeks. Our FMSQ coverage is brought to you by STP 1958, your one-stop shop for engines, clutches, engine rebuilds, and parts. Check them out on the web at stp1958.com or on social media at STP1958.